Suburban Sentinel here, along with our dog, Maggie the Mutt. Recently, we were involved in a situation wherein I was required to defend not only Maggie, but myself. And my performance during that event was a complete failure. In fact, it was an abysmal failure. Anyway, my reason for sharing this story is not out of deep regret or self-loathing. Rather, I think there is something that we can all learn from this situation. My wife and I were traveling out of state by car, and we brought Maggie with us. And as you have seen, Maggie is a smaller dog. She's about 16 pounds and is some sort of mutt, Pomeranian Terrier kind of mix, and she's somewhere around 9 years old. We were staying for a couple of days in an unfamiliar place, and one morning I took Maggie for a walk. On our walks, she remains leashed at all times, and she was on this 25-foot retractable lead at the time. As we were walking, I saw a man walking a medium-sized pit bull going in the opposite direction. Now the dog was obviously excited, but he was on a short, heavy leather leash and he had a choke collar on. We passed about 100 feet apart and both dogs were barking at one another. We simply waved at one another and kept on going in our respective directions. Maggie and I turned to walk along the bank of a nearby river, and Maggie was out at the full extension of this leash, just sniffing around as dogs do. About 5 minutes later, we were rounding a slight bend in the river, and I saw the same man with the pit bull again approaching from the opposite direction. I didn't think much about it at the time because a few minutes beforehand we had seen the same man and the dog was on a leash. But before I knew it, the pit bull had bolted from the owner and was charging my dog. Ordinarily, I would have just picked Maggie up. She's only 15 pounds. But she was at the very end of this retractable leash. And by the time I reached her, the pit bull already had his teeth sunk into her back. As is second nature by now, I reached around to my left hip, I'm a lefty, for my trusty Ruger SP-101 revolver. But of course, I was traveling out of state, where it would have been illegal for me to carry this revolver, so there was nothing on my left hip. I grabbed the pit bull by the head with both hands and pried the dog's jaws out of Maggie's back. I was not completely unarmed. On my right hip, I had this pepper gel in the holster. But as luck would have it, the dog grabbed a hold of my right arm and started biting and shaking, and I could not reach the pepper gel. I punched the pit bull in the face with my left hand. I'm not really clear on how many times, 2, maybe 3, which was kind of like hitting a railroad tie. I also had this Surefire crenellated tactical flashlight in my front left pocket, and I was reaching to grab the flashlight, hoping that would get the dog off me. Now, Maggie had escaped and she was already running away. But the dog's owner grabbed the dog and pulled him off me before I had a chance to grab the flashlight. Fortunately, all of the injuries to the dogs and people were minor. I was able to treat Maggie with the first aid kit I bring along that has her dog stuff in it. That pit bull did draw a substantial amount of blood, but the wounds weren't that bad and I was able to treat them myself. The pit bull, I believe, was fine. My punching it with my hand did essentially nothing to the dog. My injuries were superficial. It was very cold that morning and I was wearing a heavy shirt and then a sweater on top of that with a heavy oilcloth jacket. So the dog did not puncture my skin. A little bit of possible nerve damage, but no significant wounds. I am most grateful for the way things turned out. It could have been a whole lot worse. I certainly wouldn't have wanted any substantial injury to myself or my dog, nor would I want to hurt another animal unnecessarily either. Although the results were not tragic, I did fail miserably in my duty to protect my dog and myself. I'm going to examine each failure and what we have to learn from each one in turn. My friend and fellow YouTuber, the Miami Prepper, has a rather colorful expression regarding the causality between false assumptions and unintended consequences. That certainly rings true here, because I had seen the owner and dog a few minutes prior. The dog was on a leash. I wrongfully assumed that the dog was still on the leash. Therefore, I allowed our dog Maggie to be 25 feet away on the retractable leash when I should have had her at my side. If she were at my heel, I would have had time to both pick her up and remove the pepper gel from the holster on my right hip. As the Miami Prepper has told us on many occasions, assumptions can get you killed, and I will have to be more vigilant about making assumptions in the future. My second failure is with regard to this SP-101. I have trained such that fighting with this weapon has become second nature. Now, I did not at the time and still have no interest in shooting a dog, but the revolver would have been the best weapon to use at the time, and I reached for a gun that simply was not there. Not by my choice, but by legal requirements. Somehow I should have trained or conditioned my mindset to know that at least during this trip, I was not going to have a firearm available. Third major failure concerns this OC spray, or OC gel in this case. This would have been a very effective weapon against the dog. Unfortunately, the pepper gel was on my right hip and the dog had my arm, so I was unable to reach sane. Ordinarily, I carry two firearms, an SP-101 on my left hip and either another small revolver or a pistol on my right side. I should have had a backup pepper gel. This pepper spray should have been on my left hip with a second one on my right hip. In sum, what I did for the trip is I just deleted the firearms without rejiggering the location and number of other defensive weapons. And that turned out to be a big mistake. Finally, there is the flashlight. Now this Surefire Defender flashlight is a rather potent strike weapon. Unfortunately, I did not have the presence of mind to grab it immediately. I was so busy punching the pit bull with my free hand that I just neglected to grab it in time. Overall, in this situation, I'm glad I didn't. Again, I have no desire to hurt another animal, even if the animal is attacking me. But at the time, it was unclear whether this pit bull was going to rip my right arm off. So I would have used the flashlight if I had the presence of mind to do so before trying to punch this monster of a dog in the face, which essentially had no effect. So to sum up the failures from 50,000 feet, I failed to maintain adequate situational awareness. I was relying upon an inaccurate assumption. And finally, I did not do everything possible or necessary to prepare for this circumstance. Again, I'm very grateful for the way things turned out. No people or dogs were substantially injured, but next time you can bet I'm going to do a whole lot better. Hopefully there will be no next time, but again, you never know. It wasn't all about failures. There were a couple of high points. The first of which is I did have a first aid kit that was suitable for dogs on my person at the time. So Maggie's injuries were treated immediately. Also, I had taken on several occasions the American Red Cross pet first aid course, and that came in very handy about knowing what to do. I strongly believe that Maggie's injuries were mitigated by having the knowledge and the materials to treat her right away. So that is the story. So I hope some of you can learn something, as I have, from these multiple failures. Thanks for watching. This is the Suburban Sentinel. Questions and enlightening comments are always welcome. Please thumbs up and subscribe if you like what you see. Be safe, everybody.